I put my $80,000 life savings down for a house with my fiancée. She convinced me to transfer the money, then secretly applied for the mortgage in her name only. I caught her fraud just days before closing. When she refused to return the money, I took her to court and used damning text messages to watch her entire house of lies crumble. My name is Ethan Carter. I'm 32, and I am a licensed plumber in Denver. I have been running my own business for 4 years, something I built from scratch. I started as an apprentice at 19, got my license at 23, and have worked tirelessly ever since. My specialization ranges from residential services to small commercial projects. It's not glamorous, but it's stable and leaves me profits of about $95,000 a year after expenses. I achieved all this through discipline and tenacity. My father used to repeat a phrase, "He who has his tools has his future." I took it as a mantra. For years, I lived almost like a monk. A tiny studio that looked like a closet with a makeshift kitchen, an old Ford Ranger that sounded like it would fall apart every cold morning, and a neighborhood where car alarms were the nightly lullaby. But that $50 rent allowed me to maximize my savings. My routine in those first years was grueling. I woke up at 5:30 a.m., worked out for an hour, worked from 7 a.m. until 8 or even 9 p.m., ate the cheapest food possible, and went to sleep exhausted. Weekends were used for overtime, emergency repairs, quick installations for acquaintances, and any job that helped me scrape together extra dollars. No restaurants, no new clothes, no comforts. Everything went straight into the savings fund. After a lot of effort, I managed to buy my first work truck, a used Ford Transit with 140,000 miles for $8,500. Then I invested in tools, licenses, insurance, and the small storefront I rented with the help of my father's signature as a CEO co-signer. The first year was as intense as it was terrifying. Sometimes I barely managed to cover costs. I had clients who tried to haggle after a job well done, or who simply disappeared without paying. I learned the hard way the importance of collecting deposits and putting everything in writing. Still, I persevered, delivering good work and honoring every commitment. And it worked. Soon, I started receiving calls from people tired of the typical trade problems: late professionals, inflated prices, shoddy work. Positive reviews and word-of-mouth recommendations did their job. One project led to another, and then 3 more, and so on. 2 years later, I couldn't handle everything alone anymore. The first to join the team was Mark, a friend who was tired of being exploited by his former company. I offered him a job when I realized I was rejecting requests because I couldn't keep up. He hesitated at first. He asked if I could really afford to hire him, if it wouldn't sink my numbers. I met him at my small workshop, where there was barely room for a desk I built myself and an old filing cabinet. I told him the truth. I had more workload than I could handle, and I saw him as an investment, not a risk. That same day, he accepted and quit his previous job. Eventually, I added 2 more workers, Rick and Oscar, both responsible, dedicated, and detail-oriented. Thanks to them, the business grew to occupy a much larger space of about 2,400 square feet, with room for 3 trucks, complete inventory, and a real office. I also hired a part-time assistant, Sarah, to handle scheduling and invoicing. It was a relief to admit that I couldn't do everything on my own anymore. My father was there when we moved to the new space. He spent hours loading tools with me. Before leaving, he gave me a box with my grandfather's old pipe wrench manufactured in the 1950s. He told me that my grandfather would also be proud that I had built something with my own hands. That object hangs in my office today, framed. Every time I see it, I remember where I come from and why I worked so hard. As for my personal life, I had been with Vanessa Hayes for 3 years. For the last 1.5 years, we had lived together in my apartment. She worked as an administrator at a dental clinic on the affluent side of the city and earned about $52,000 a year. I believed we had a stable relationship. We shared expenses, made plans, and talked about the future. I met her at a mutual friend's birthday party. Her laugh was the first thing that captivated me. Authentic, free, contagious. That night, we talked in the backyard until 2 a.m., even after everyone else had left. I felt it could be the start of something serious. and it was. Or so it seemed. We started dating without grand expectations. She asked about my business and seemed genuinely interested in the difficulties of running a small company. When I asked her about her work, she lit up, explaining how she had reorganized her office's filing system to improve efficiency. The first few months were excellent. When my schedule allowed, we had lunch together, had dinner at simple places, and on weekends we explored areas of Denver neither of us knew. She liked that I was building something of my own. She said it showed determination and vision. I valued that she had her own professional life and didn't expect me to finance her lifestyle. Vanessa was one of those people who appear to have everything under control. She always dressed impeccably, perfectly matched outfits, not a single detail out of place. She carried a colorful planner she used constantly and never went out without her nails done or her schedule meticulously organized. She spoke enthusiastically about financial responsibility, investments, savings strategies, and retirement plans she read about in different blogs. She sounded like someone with great money management skills, something that, unfortunately, I ignored as a red flag. She talked a lot about finances, but never had any savings. Every time we discussed expenses, she insisted she was very aware of how she managed her money. However, she would show up with $400 designer handbags while complaining about not being able to afford a vacation. Her closet was full of expensive clothes, but she lived worried about her credit card balance. She paid subscriptions to various streaming services, went to the spa frequently, ate out for lunch every day, and yet was always barely making ends meet. I thought she simply had different priorities. For some people, experiences and aesthetics are worth more than financial stability. It wasn't my approach, but I accepted it. When we decided to live together after 18 months of dating, I set clear rules from the start. I explained that since the apartment was mine, and I already covered most of the expenses, it was fair for her to pay a third of the rent and utilities. She accepted without hesitation, saying it sounded reasonable and that she appreciated me not requiring her to pay half. The first few months were quiet. We had a stable routine. I left early for the workshop, and she left for the dental office around 8 a.m. We texted throughout the day, almost always ate dinner together, and watched series at night. On weekends, we cooked for the week, ran errands, and managed the house together. But I started noticing things. Her share of the rent and utilities often arrived late. Sometimes she forgot to send me her part via payment apps or sent incomplete amounts, promising to cover the rest the following month, a promise rarely kept. I didn't want to pressure her because she was my partner, and I didn't want to seem petty. Big mistake. Having financial boundaries is essential, even within a relationship. She also had a habit of suggesting expensive activities without offering to pay her share. We should go to this new restaurant downtown meant I would pay. We could do a weekend in the mountains was another direct charge to my card. She presented it as something we did, but in practice, they were plans I financed, and she enjoyed. I justified it by thinking I earned more, had less debt, and was better off financially. Being generous with my girlfriend didn't seem like a problem, although now I understand I was acting naively. Affection can cloud judgment in the most obvious things. We had been looking for a house for about 6 months. The market in Denver is completely insane. Every property receives multiple offers. There are bidding wars, and any decent property disappears in a matter of days. First-time buyers compete against cash-offering investors and people willing to waive inspections. Our first offer was on a townhome in Highlands listed at $340,000. We offered $355,000. We were beaten by an offer of $385,000 in cash, and the seller's agent didn't even give us a chance to counteroffer. The second attempt was a ranch-style house that required electrical and aesthetic updates, but the structure, including the plumbing, was in excellent condition. Perfect for me, considering I could do some of the manual labor. We offered the asking price and a 30-day closing, but a flip investor offered $10,000 more and waived the inspection contingency. Another defeat. The third was a foreclosed property in Aurora. It needed a lot of repair, but had a solid structure. We spent 2 weeks calculating costs and securing our financing. When we submitted the offer, there were already 4 proposals ahead. We didn't even make it into final consideration. Each failure disheartened us. We started imagining decorating the place, arranging furniture, organizing holiday parties, only to receive a rejection email and return to the search from scratch. Vanessa dealt with the frustration by reviewing real estate apps for hours, flagging houses we couldn't afford. I poured myself into work, trying not to think that I was 32 and still renting. Mark, a good friend, would text me after every failed offer. "That's the market. Don't give up. The right house will come." I joked that at this rate I'd own a house at 40. He insisted it was better to wait for the right one than rush. He spoke from experience. His ex-wife had pressured him to buy a house they couldn't afford, which ended in divorce and bankruptcy. Then the perfect house appeared, a small craftsman-style home in a good neighborhood. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a renovated kitchen with modern appliances, a fenced yard, and a detached garage that could become my workshop. Built in 1945, renovated in 2018, and meticulously cared for by the current owners, who had to move for work. It was listed at $385,000, which was a surprisingly reasonable price for the area. Most exceeded $425,000, but this one needed to sell quickly to match the seller's work deadline. We visited it on a Saturday morning. The spring light poured through the windows, reflecting on the original, perfectly restored hardwood floors. The kitchen had white subway tiles, wood countertops, and the farmhouse sink Vanessa had been mentioning for months. The backyard had tall shade trees, raised garden beds, and an ideal grilling space. But the garage was what won me over. Detached 2-car structure, electricity installed, concrete floor, overhead lighting, and enough space to set up a full workshop. I always imagined spending weekends in my own workshop, working on personal projects, or even restoring an old motorcycle I'd been considering buying. While I was visualizing all this, Vanessa walked through the house completely excited, taking photos of every corner and anticipating where she would put each piece of furniture. She repeated over and over, almost trembling with enthusiasm, "This is the place. I know it. This is our house." The agent, a woman with 3 decades of real estate experience, gave us a direct, no-nonsense overview. "I have 4 viewings scheduled for today and 6 more for tomorrow. The owners want to receive all offers by Monday at 6 p.m. and will review them that evening. With the market as it is, expect several competitive proposals." It was the typical strategy to rush buyers, but in the current market, it sounded like simple reality. That night we sat at my kitchen table to calmly review everything. I opened my laptop and loaded a spreadsheet I had been updating for months. Expenses, savings, estimates, additional costs, everything. The property was listed at $385,000. To avoid PMI, private mortgage insurance, we needed 20% of the value, $77,000. Then, closing costs would be between $8,000 and $10,000. Inspection, appraisal, and various fees would add another $2,000. Plus, we needed at least $5,000 reserved for urgent repairs or purchases. Total estimated liquid funds needed, about $92,000. Here's where it got tricky. I had $80,000 saved. It took me 6 years to accumulate it. 6 years of constant effort, avoiding vacations, refusing to move to a better apartment, postponing the purchase of a newer vehicle, and rejecting every non-essential expense to live or grow my business. This money represented over 16,000 hours of hard work and difficult decisions. Vanessa assured me she had saved $15,000, which gave us a total fund of $95,000, enough to cover everything required for the purchase, even with a small safety margin. She was totally convinced and told me so with that enthusiastic certainty she had. "Let's do it. Let's submit an offer." I reviewed the numbers one more time. I asked her directly, "Are you sure you have the $15,000 ready? We need them to be available without a hitch." "Of course," she immediately replied. "I've been saving for this. I have everything prepared." There was something in her tone that sounded too rehearsed, but I decided to trust. We were a couple. I didn't think she could lie about something like that. We concluded that we would submit an offer at the asking price with a 20% down payment, conventional financing, a 30-day closing, and not too many contingencies. It was a solid proposal. Vanessa, ever so organized, offered to handle the documentation and coordinate with the mortgage broker. She worked in an office, was accustomed to forms and paperwork, and I had 3 large simultaneous projects consuming entire 60-hour weeks. "You focus on work," she told me. "I'll take care of everything related to the house." That was my first mistake, trusting, without supervising. Then she asked me to transfer my $80,000 to her account, because, as she said, it was better for the money to come from a single place, so the bank would have cleaner documentation. It seemed reasonable. Banks are usually strict with proof of origin of funds. Second mistake, doing it without any written agreement. We submitted the offer on Monday. On Tuesday afternoon, the acceptance response arrived. Vanessa was practically euphoric, drawing up lists of colors, furniture, and renovations. I also felt relief. It had been months of searching, losing offers, and starting over. The following weeks were a whirlwind. I kept working non-stop. She claimed to be handling the paperwork, talking to the mortgage broker, and managing the inspections. She updated me every now and then with brief reports on dates and documents. Apparently, everything was going well. 3 weeks later, I asked to see the credit paperwork. I wanted to review the typical things: interest rate, conditions, estimated payments, the basics before committing to a 30-year debt. "The broker still has everything," she quickly replied. "I'll give you copies when it's finalized. There's no online portal to review the application. They use an old system. It's complicated. Don't worry, it's all under control." That should have alarmed me more than it did, but exhaustion had made me trusting. Then Mark, with a casual comment, changed my perspective. We were installing a water heater at a client's house when he asked me, "So, excited about your first house?" "Yeah, if all goes well, we sign next week. Vanessa has been handling almost everything." "You need to check the documents. Everything. She understands those things better. She works in an office." Mark, divorced and with bitter experience of trusting too much, gave me a serious look. "Brother, never, and I mean never, let another person handle the papers alone on something this big. My ex tried something similar. It cost me dearly to learn that." That tone made me uneasy. "What do you mean?" "I mean, make sure your name appears on absolutely everything. Deed, mortgage, contracts. When a lot of money is involved, even people you love can do shady things." His words haunted me all day. That night, I couldn't shake the uncomfortable feeling. Vanessa was at a work event and wouldn't be back until late. I stayed in the apartment mentally reviewing the entire situation, growing more uneasy with how she had avoided showing me any document. I took my laptop and started checking every email I had saved. Among them, I found the mortgage broker's information that Vanessa had forwarded me weeks ago. Without wasting time, I drafted a formal message. "Hello, I'm Ethan Carter. I'm participating in the purchase of the property located at the address indicated along with Vanessa Hayes. Could you send me access to the online portal to review our application? Thank you." The answer arrived the next morning while I was working on a site. I almost dropped my phone when I read what it said. "Hello, Ethan. The application only lists Vanessa Hayes as the sole applicant. If you plan to be included in the loan, we will have to restart the process and recalculate everything with both incomes and credit profiles. Please call me when possible to discuss. Sole applicant. My $80,000, her name only." I read that email several times, feeling anger begin to rise in me like a sharp blow to the chest. I apologized to Mark, who was coordinating work beside me, and drove straight back home. My mind couldn't stop processing the obvious. Vanessa had received my money, submitted the application using only her name, and intended to buy the house we had chosen together, as if it were exclusively hers. I would end up living in a place where I had put most of the down payment without having any legal right. If something went wrong between us, I was left unprotected. No property, no investment, no stake, nothing. The precision of the deception was insulting. It wasn't a mistake or confusion. She had planned it. She herself asked me to transfer the money to her account. She had prevented me from reviewing any document. Every time I asked questions, she diverted the topic or invented excuses. I stayed in the truck for a long time, parked in front of the building where we lived, with my hands trembling. But little by little, the fury turned into a cold, calculated decision, a clear plan. I called the mortgage broker directly. "This is Ethan Carter. I just received your email. I need to know something. Has the down payment already been transferred, or is it still pending until the signing?" "It's still pending," he replied. "The transfer is made at closing, which is scheduled for next Tuesday." "And if I decided to withdraw my funds, what would happen?" There was a brief silence. "Well, if you're not on the loan, technically that money would be Vanessa's. But if there's a disagreement about the origin of the funds, we would have to stop the process. The bank doesn't accept disputed money." "Perfect," I replied. "There is a dispute. That money came from my account with the understanding that the purchase would be joint, which has been misrepresented. I consider the transfer under false pretenses and withdraw my contribution." "Understood," the broker said. "I must place an immediate halt on the application and notify everyone. This will significantly complicate things." "Excellent." I sent everything in writing in an email addressed to both of us. I hung up and immediately called my bank. I explained that I had transferred the funds for a joint purchase, but discovered I was being excluded from the property. They couldn't reverse the transfer due to the time elapsed, but they formally documented the dispute and gave me a notarized letter certifying that the money had come from my account and that the original intention was to acquire the house between two people. Then I called a real estate lawyer. Oscar had hired him during his divorce, so I trusted him. I explained every detail and asked about my options. His answer was direct. "Without a written agreement on the use of those funds, the situation is complicated, but we can argue fraud or unjust enrichment. At a minimum, we can block that money enough to prevent the purchase from going forward." "Do it," I told him, "whatever is necessary." That same night, I packed a small suitcase and checked into a hotel. I left a note in the kitchen before leaving. "I know about the mortgage application. We need to talk. I will be at the downtown Marriott. Call me when you are ready to explain why my funds are buying a house solely in your name." Then all that was left was to wait. At 6:47 p.m., my phone started ringing. Vanessa, I let it go to voicemail. She called 6 more times in less than an hour. The messages changed tone with each attempt. First confused, then worried, then anxious, finally angry. "Ethan, what are you talking about? Call me. Where are you? What note? What's going on?" "The mortgage broker called me. He's upset about something about a dispute. What did you do? You're ruining everything. Call me now. We have to talk. This can be clarified. It must be a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" "Right." I replied just once. "There is no misunderstanding. You used my money to apply for the house only in your name. That is fraud. My lawyer will contact you." Ellipsis points appeared immediately, then disappeared, then came back. Finally, her message arrived. "It's not what you think. I can explain. Please come home and let's talk face to face. You had weeks to talk. You chose the lie. I will recover my money, and you will resolve your situation without me." She called again. I rejected the call. Immediately, an incoming call from Eleanor, her mother, appeared. I rejected that too. Then Chloe, her sister. The whole family was mobilizing. At 9 p.m., Mark called me from work. "Brother, are you okay? I didn't hear anything after you left." I told him everything. The mortgage application, that Vanessa was listed as the sole owner, my $80,000, the process halt, the lawyer. There was a long silence. "I can't believe it, man," he finally said. "She really tried to lock you out of your own house. I'm sorry I was right about this. You saved yourself from a huge disaster. What are you going to do now?" "Recover my money and let her deal with what she caused." "Well, if you need a place to stay or support if she shows up at your apartment, I'm here. Call any time." The next morning, I received an email from Vanessa's mother, Eleanor. It was a mix of reproach and emotional manipulation. "Ethan, this is Eleanor. Vanessa is devastated by this misunderstanding between you two. She has worked so hard to get that house for your future together, and now you are throwing everything away over administrative details. She says you accused her of fraud, which is absurd. She would never hurt you. You need to sit down like adults and resolve this before destroying something beautiful over a simple mistake. We have always seen you as part of the family, and we are disappointed in how you are handling this." I forwarded it to my lawyer with a single line: "Exhibit A, gaslighting begins." He replied almost immediately. "Classic. Save everything. Document any attempt at contact." I organized everything to leave no loose ends, because if I had learned anything in recent years, it was that details could save you from disaster or completely sink you. That was the second day of total silence. Not a message, not a call, not a sign of good faith, just the constant sound of my phone vibrating with notifications I didn't intend to open. That morning, the communication I expected arrived. The mortgage broker sent the formal notification. The loan application for the property is suspended due to a dispute related to the down payment funds. All involved parties have been informed. The closing scheduled for next Tuesday is canceled until this conflict is resolved. The sellers are evaluating their options. I read that paragraph several times. It didn't surprise me, but it gave me a kind of internal confirmation, as if the universe were saying, "You weren't crazy. She was lying to you." That night, after dinner at a restaurant near the hotel, I returned to the lobby intending to go straight up to my room and sleep. But there was Vanessa. I still don't know how she found the exact place I was staying. The only thing I am sure of is that when someone is desperate, they find a way. Her appearance immediately struck me. She wasn't wearing the perfect makeup or the impeccable hairstyle she used even to go to the supermarket. Her hair was pulled back carelessly. She wore comfortable clothes that seemed to have been grabbed at random, and dark circles under her eyes revealed she hadn't slept well in days. It was as if stress had hit her full on. "Ethan, please, can we talk for 5 minutes?" "Talk, yes, but right here," I replied, maintaining my distance. She wanted to take the conversation to a private place, as if that would give her some emotional advantage, but I didn't allow it. I told her she had exactly 5 minutes and I wouldn't grant her one more. Her eyes immediately welled up with tears, as if that had been her strategy from the first second. "All of this is a huge misunderstanding," she began. "I was planning to add your name as soon as we closed. The broker told me it was more practical to apply a loan first, and then modify the deed." "That is false," I interrupted her. "I already spoke with him. He never said anything like that." She tried to correct herself, saying that he had suggested it, that based on her income, she qualified a loan, and adding me complicated the bank's calculations. But that wasn't the problem. Even if her version made any sense, which it didn't explain why she never told me anything or why she evaded all my attempts to review the documents together. "I wanted to surprise you," she finally said, as if offering a tender explanation, "to have everything ready and just ask you to sign. You wanted to show me you could handle something big on your own. And the way to demonstrate it was to keep a house bought with my money and exclude me completely. That's not demonstrating anything. That's fraud." "It's not fraud," she replied, almost shouting. "We're together. Mine is yours, and yours is mine. Mine was mine, but the house, according to your documents, was only going to be yours." The accusation hit her, leaving her speechless for a few seconds. Then she tried to play the victim, accusing me of not trusting her after 3 years. I responded calmly, because I had no emotion left to spend on this discussion. "Trust was destroyed when you started lying. Not today, not yesterday, weeks ago." Tears started streaming down her face, intense, almost desperate. "Please, Ethan, don't do this. Let's restart the application. Let's put both our names on the papers. The sellers can wait. Don't let go of our dream. It's the perfect house for us." "It was your dream," I said. "One you intended to finance with my money and keep for yourself. I'm out. My lawyer is handling the return of my funds." "And what about me?" "I put money in too. I can't afford this house alone. "You should have thought about that before trying to leave me out," I replied. I left her crying in the middle of the lobby. For about 30 seconds, I felt a pang of guilt. I'm not made of stone. But remembering the manipulation, the deception, and the coldness with which she planned everything, the feeling evaporated. I was left with a single sensation: relief for having discovered everything in time. The following week was a silent but constant war. Vanessa and her family initiated an intense campaign to paint me as the villain of the story. Her mother sent me several long emails filled with sermons about how I was destroying her daughter's future and how everything could be resolved by talking. Her sister Chloe, direct as always, wrote to me calling me controlling and selfish. Some of Vanessa's friends, people I barely knew, sent me messages accusing me of having abandoned her at a critical moment. The version they were circulating was convenient. I had canceled the house purchase over an emotional issue and abandoned her financially. Not a mention of the attempted fraud, not a word about my $80,000, not a single reference to her wanting to be the sole owner behind my back. I ignored every message. My lawyer had been very clear. Absolute silence, except for strictly legal communications. Then came another update from the mortgage broker. The sellers were unwilling to wait for the resolution of our conflict. They had decided to accept an alternative offer. The contract was completely canceled, and the deposited funds would be returned to the corresponding sender. Perfect. That house was no longer a problem for me. Now began the complicated part: recovering my money. My lawyer sent Vanessa Hayes, the legal name used in all documentation, a formal demand letter. She had 10 business days to return the $80,000 or face a lawsuit for fraud and unjust enrichment. The letter included everything: the timeline, proof of the transfer, the jurisprudence, everything. The response came quickly, through her lawyer. Yes, she had hired one too. The document stated that Vanessa completely rejected my version. She claimed the money had been a gift for their joint life project and that she had suffered emotional and financial damages from my sudden withdrawal. They even insinuated a countersuit. When I sent it to my lawyer, his response was almost amused. They are bluffing. No judge is going to consider an $80,000 down payment a gift, especially when there is evidence that it was for a joint purchase. And any damage she alleges is the responsibility of her own decisions. We will proceed with the lawsuit. And so we did. Because the limit for small claims in Colorado was $25,000, we had to go to district court. More expensive, slower, but necessary. The discovery phase was a spectacle. We obtained the mortgage broker's records, where it was clear that Vanessa had applied a loan. She had never mentioned my name as a co-owner and always referred to the house as her property. We also recovered emails where it was explicitly explained to her that if I contributed funds, I should appear on the application to have rights. And then came the unexpected gem: the text messages between Vanessa and her sister Chloe, 2 weeks before I discovered everything. Chloe: "So Ethan puts up almost all the down payment, but you're the only one on the contract. Genius." Vanessa: "He doesn't need to know the details. That way, if something goes wrong, I'm protected. He's so busy with work he won't even notice." Chloe: "You're brilliant. I love it." Vanessa: "It's just being practical. Why share if I do the heavy lifting?" Those screenshots became the legal exhibits of the lawsuit. One day, Mark read the messages and shook his head. "I can't believe it. She really thought she could get away with it. The level of arrogance is unbelievable." The legal process lasted 4 months. During that time, I moved to a new apartment in a safer building and away from any attempt at confrontation. I even obtained a restraining order when Vanessa appeared twice at my work trying to talk. During those weeks leading up to the hearing, Vanessa Hayes' story constantly changed. First, she swore everything had been a simple misunderstanding. Then she blamed the mortgage broker, claiming it was an administrative error. Later, she asserted that her plan had always been to add my name to the documentation at a later stage, then that the money was a gift. Finally, that we had reached a supposed verbal agreement where she would reimburse me when circumstances allowed. Her versions varied so much that I imagined her lawyer trying to keep up, almost dizzy from so many contradictory justifications. My position, however, never moved an inch because I was only telling the truth. I had transferred $80,000 to buy a home jointly with both of us as owners. However, she submitted the mortgage application exclusively in her name. When I discovered the maneuver, I immediately stopped the operation, and now all I sought was to recover my money. The hearing date finally arrived. Vanessa appeared impeccably dressed, professionally styled, precise makeup, perfectly combed hair, playing the role of the aggrieved fiancé with almost theatrical skill. Her mother and sister were sitting behind her, giving me looks charged with contempt from the moment I walked in. My lawyer spoke calmly. Following a meticulous order, he presented the proof of my bank transfer, the mortgage application listing only Vanessa Hayes, the broker's emails clarifying that I was never mentioned as a co-buyer, and finally, the messages between Vanessa and her sister Chloe, which proved the idea was premeditated. He also showed how, upon learning of the deception, I immediately stopped the transaction. Vanessa's defense tried to change the focus. Her lawyer argued that my contribution had been a gift typical of a committed relationship, that I had never demanded in writing to be a co-owner, and that my reaction was disproportionate. The judge, far from impressed, maintained a firm tone. "Are you suggesting that $80,000 as a down payment for a home is a gift?" he asked, looking over his glasses. "Your client applied to be the sole owner without disclosing that a large part of the money came from her partner. That is not a gift. That is fraud." The lawyer stammered something about expectations within a relationship, insinuating implicit promises. The judge interrupted her. "Let's answer clearly. Did Ms. Hayes put in writing that she was going to include Mr. Carter on the title or the mortgage?" "No, Your Honor." "Did she inform the mortgage broker that the contribution came from someone who would not be on the loan?" "The circumstances were complex." "Yes or no, Counselor?" "No, Your Honor." He then looked directly at Vanessa. "Ms. Hayes, were you planning to add Mr. Ethan Carter to the property title or the mortgage after closing?" She hesitated, took a deep breath, and blurted out, "Yes, Your Honor." Eventually. Eventually. "After securing absolute title to a property acquired mostly with another person's money?" the judge retorted. "A true partnership means sharing ownership, not one party putting up the money and the other keeping the asset. That is not a partnership. It is misappropriation." The judgment was delivered forcefully. Vanessa had to return the $80,000 within a maximum period of 30 days, along with interest, legal fees, and court costs, totaling approximately $87,000. "If Ms. Hayes does not comply within the established period," the judge added, "Mr. Carter is authorized to initiate wage garnishment and execution of assets." I felt as if I could breathe freely for the first time in months. It had been 4 months of constant stress, uncertainty, and emotional exhaustion. I finally saw the end of the tunnel. As soon as we left the courtroom, Vanessa tried to stop me in the hallway. "Ethan, please, can we talk about a payment plan? I don't have $87,000. This is going to ruin me." I kept walking without looking at her. Mark, who had attended to give me moral support, shot her a dry look. "Maybe you should have thought about that before trying to keep his money," he told her. Vanessa's mother, Eleanor, approached, visibly upset. "You're destroying my daughter's life over money," she snapped. "Over what she did to me," I replied. "You're talking about her trying to keep my contribution, about excluding me from the mortgage, because that wasn't love. It was deception." The woman continued to accuse me of selfishness, sexism, and ruining her daughter's future. Mark outright chuckled. "Male ego, ma'am? Your daughter tried to steal $80,000. This is common sense, not ego." We left while Eleanor continued to shout things about commitment and responsibility, and Chloe hugged a sobbing Vanessa. 29 days later, just before the deadline, the full transfer arrived. $87,000 exactly. It included my original contribution, accrued interest, and a portion of the legal fees. According to what Mark heard from mutual acquaintances, Vanessa had to take out a personal loan with a very high interest rate, around 18%, to cover the judgment. That loan was going to haunt her for years, but that was no longer my problem. Each person is responsible for the decisions they make. To celebrate, Mark invited me to dinner. He raised his glass to dodging bullets in time, and to friends who know how to give good advice. I responded in kind. As the days went by, news about Vanessa stopped reaching me so directly. It wasn't until several weeks later that, through isolated comments and loose rumors, I started hearing certain details. She had not ended up in the situation I imagined for her. The independence she so proclaimed quickly crumbled. Her closest circle ended up absorbing the consequences she had previously tried to shift onto me. And although I didn't seek confirmation, everything pointed to her life taking an abrupt turn, far from that confident, self-sufficient image she projected when she tried to leave me out of the purchase. I, for my part, closed that chapter without looking back. Every piece fell back into place, and I finally recovered the peace of mind she had put at risk. I didn't need to know more. What was done, and everyone moved forward, carrying the weight of their own decisions.